Hey, this is Dr. Fox, and is your relationship feeding your soul or feeding off of it? And in this episode, we're going to uncover the insidious signs of parasitic relationships. Now, this is where love is kind of one-sided and boundaries get blurred and emotional energy is quickly siphoned off and lost. So let's find out if you're giving too much and learn how to reclaim your power in your relationship. So let's get into it. First, a parasitic relationship. Well, it's when one person continuously takes from their partner without giving back. So it's this siphoning off, right, of the energy, of the kindness, of the giving. And these relationships are really emotionally draining because they thrive on an imbalance, that relationship imbalance. And in many ways, it's exploitation of the kindness of that other individual. And this often leads one partner feeling depleted while the other one reaps all the reward and all the benefits. So first, what we want to do to identify these parasitic relationships, first, is there one-sided giving and exploitation? Now, in a parasitic relationship, one partner is constantly giving, whether it's emotional support, time, or even money in some cases, and while the other's always taking it. For example, you find yourself always doing things to make your partner happy, like could be cooking, paying for dinners, paying things off, or listening to their problems, but when you need support, they're nowhere to be found. They're absent. And you really feel that sense of absence. You're like, wait, something feels off. And it's always good to kind of slow down and really make sure you're looking at it objectively, that I am giving a lot. What's this person giving me? And remember, it's not about giving to get. That's not what we're talking about. Because in relationships, we don't want to give to get, which means that if I give you this, I should get that. That's not what we're talking about. What we're talking about is where it's really one-sided, where you're giving, again, a lot of your time, a lot of your money, a lot of your listening, a lot of your emotional energy, and you get nothing in return, which is when you ask for those things. When you ask for their ear, for example, meaning to listen to you, or you ask for some kindness or some tenderness, you don't get that back. And you feel this sense of loss or emptiness or depletion of your energy and kindness. And over time, this one-sided giving, it exhausts the giver. It often leaves you feeling drained because the relationship offers no replenishment. It's not supplying you back with the emotional energy that you're giving. So it's not a tit for tat. We don't want to confuse that. What it is, it's just that give and take back and forth of any relationship. Everyone needs to give, but also in any relationship, everyone needs to take too. I mean, sometimes, we're tired and we want someone to maybe cook dinner for us or run by and pick something up or ask how we're doing, or listen to us just complain about maybe the people we work with, the people we know, or an experience we had. And that helps to replenish it too. So it's not always about property or what we can gain or material items. It's also about psychological, emotional, as well as a lot of generalized understanding of where you're coming from. Now, another component of parasitic relationships, these are emotional manipulation and control. The parasitic partner often uses manipulative tactics, and this can be like guilt tripping to maintain control. For instance, right, you might say something like, if you really loved me, you do this for me, whatever this might be. Or they make you feel like you're responsible for their happiness. Now, this emotional manipulation fosters dependency, and that's not what we want. Remember, we want that evenly balanced relationship, not where one is emotionally dependent on the other, or that the other person defines who you are. It's not what you want. The relationship shouldn't define you. That's a really dangerous path to go down, because what we want is we want to be able to be ourselves and express ourselves in that relationship. Sometimes if we don't know who we are, then we have to do that exploration. And I do have some other videos on that you might want to check out. I'll put one at the end of this video so you can check it out. Now, when we talk about that emotional manipulation and a foster dependency, this is where the giver, you feel obligated to constantly care for the other person, even at their own expense. So you're giving even though it hurts you. And you're giving so the other person is more comfortable. And sometimes, like parenting relationships, that's kind of what it is sometimes, is you give so that your kids can be more comfortable, and then you have to kind of deal with the consequence, right? Whether it's energy or it's money or it's time or whatever it is. But when we talk about relationships, and in this case, really, it's understandable that at times that you're going to give those things. You're going to give time. You're going to give energy, right? You're going to give patience and all those things. But when you can't, you get emotionally manipulated and you feel controlled. It's a lot like a puppet, right? The puppet, if it could feel, would feel those strings by the puppet master. And what happens is that when you start to speak up and say, hey, I'd like a little, and I don't know if you'd phrase it this way, but I'd like a little return on that investment. I'd like to feel like that you're giving to this relationship as well. Then you start to feel those strings get pulled, which is, see, you don't care about me. You don't understand. You're not paying attention, to get turned on you. And you have to be really, really careful in those instances because it is an emotional manipulation with an attempt to control you. And the parasitic partner uses this control to keep taking, knowing the giver will continue to meet those demands. And that ends up in a dependent relationship or codependent relationship. Dependent relationship, that is where you just give and give and give and you're not paying any attention to yourself. Codependent, this is that you are giving and you give a lot, but that giving gives you a sense of self. It gives you that sense of appreciation, recognition, or importance. And that's what happens. So you got to be really careful and really kind of tease those things out. It can get you down a real tricky road. But there's more, because we also have boundary violations and lack of empathy in parasitic relationships. Now, in this instance, so parasitic partners, they often disregard boundaries because they're focused solely on their own needs. For example, they may call you in the middle of the night, expecting you to drop everything to help them without caring if you're busy, exhausted, your other needs, or your other expectations, or your other responsibilities. And if you try to set boundaries in this case, like asking for space or time to yourself so you can just relax. Sometimes, time to ourselves can be really restorative. So we can sit and kind of process what's going on and helps us chill. And that's nice. Just chilling is nice. But when you ask for space or time to yourself, they ignore or dismiss those needs. And this lack of empathy really shows that they're not truly concerned with your well-being, only with what they can get from you. Remember, it's important to really make sure we're looking at these things objectively and make sure that you're like, well, when I ask for space or I ask for something, is it getting turned on you? When you ask for boundaries, you're like, hey, we should have more of a give and take, like A, B, or C. Then they get really frustrated. When you try to communicate your experience, maybe how difficult it is or how stressful it is, they don't really empathize with you. They don't put themselves in your shoes so they can understand where you're coming from. And that's that lack of empathy. And another one is also isolation. Now, to maintain control, a parasitic partner may try to cut you off from your support system. This could be family, friends, whomever it may be. And they may discourage you from spending time with those people. And subtly, they make you feel guilty for wanting to see other people. Now, when I say see other people, I don't mean like date other people, right? That's a separate issue. But they may say things when you want to spend time with friends or you want to go see your family or you want to do those things. They may say things like, what do you need to see them when you have me? So I'm not enough. You're saying that I can't supply you with enough love, attention, caring, so on and so forth. And what's that doing? It's certainly a manipulation attempt and a tactic. And we do see that a lot in individuals with narcissistic personality disorder. They do try to isolate their partner through manipulation. And certainly parasitic relationships can be a component of being with someone who is along the narcissistic spectrum. But what's important about this, and specifically about the parasitic aspect of relationships, is that by isolating you, they make you more dependent on them. And this limits your ability to get help from others or even to get a clearer, broader perspective of the relationship. And when you don't, and you're like, okay, I should make him or her, this person, my central focus. He or she, they are absolutely right that I shouldn't need my family. I shouldn't need my friends. I should just be relying on them. That should be a red flag for you. Because if those thoughts are going through your mind, something's happening there. Because we should have a support system that helps us see the world around us more objectively. We should have people in our life that challenge our views sometimes and challenge us to grow and develop in a positive way. They shouldn't do it by shaming us, by making us feel bad or manipulating us or not having empathy. Remember, we just talked about those in that parasitic relationship. So what we want to do is we want to have that broad support system. We want to have people that challenge us. Because if we don't, this can deepen the control that the parasitic individual has over you. And that's the last thing you want. Speaking of last things, one more, and this is the depletion of self-worth. And here, over time, as you're constantly giving without receiving anything in return, this wears down your self-esteem. The giver, right, may start to feel unworthy, questioning their own value because their needs are never met in the relationship. They might think, maybe I'm not good enough to deserve love or attention or caring or that balanced relationship. Now, notice when I say balanced relationship, what we're talking about, see, I always make this movement because sometimes you're going to need more and sometimes they're going to need more. But that balanced relationship overall stays in balance. And here, when we have that parasitic relationship, but it eats away at our self-worth, and we start to ask, maybe I don't deserve those things, or you feel a sense of shame or doubt or even inferiority associated with asking for what you want or setting up those boundaries. And that can start to kind of bleed into your self-worth and really kind of mess up how you see yourself and how you assert yourself. And it's so important to be aware of this because those parasitic partners are really good at exploiting those aspects of your personality. And this depletion, as it kind of eats away your self-worth, can make it harder for you, the giver, to recognize that you deserve better. And this can even make you feel trapped in the toxic dynamic of a parasitic relationship. Now, in a parasitic relationship, the giver is often left emotionally, mentally, and sometimes even financially drained. Makes total sense, right? The parasitic partner uses guilt, manipulation, and isolation to control the relationship, leaving you, the giver in some cases, or you could be the manipulator or the parasitic component. The odds are pretty good that you're the giver if you're watching this video, but it can cause you to feel powerless and unappreciated. And the long-term impact of that is a loss of self-worth. It can leave you really emotionally exhausted. Makes total sense, and it makes it crucial for you to recognize these patterns and to take steps to protect yourself. How can you do that? First, the emotional impact. You've got to recognize that there are emotional and mental consequences of staying in a parasitic relationship. This can be anxiety, depression, low self-worth, and these things wear you out. They wear you out from the inside. So that makes it really hard for you to have the energy to take care of yourself, to do the things you need to do. And it leads to burnout, which then adds to further depression, anxiety, and low self-worth. I want to encourage you to protect yourself. Now, that's setting those firm boundaries. And when you set boundaries, you got to realize that boundaries aren't always concrete, right? It's this way or the highway. It's not those ultimatums. That when you set those boundaries, what you want to make sure that they're firm and fair to you and fair to the partner. And firm means that there's some degree of flexibility, but you don't throw them out the window as soon as they're challenged. You don't want to do that. And you got to have those steps to protect your emotional and mental well-being. Think about, okay, I'm going to set up this boundary, and this boundary is going to allow me some time to myself, explaining to my partner that sometimes when I come home from a hard day, I want to tell you about it, but I need a minute or so to kind of get my head together. Like earlier in my life, a while back, the first thing I would do when I came home, put my stuff down, and I would always go to the mail. And I like to go to the mail because it was a bit of a walk, I'd walk down there. I like to go by myself. I like to get the mail, I'm walking back with the mail and kind of looking, through the mail. And even that little walk, it was only like a couple minutes, but it helped me just kind of, remove myself from the day for a second and then transition, so to speak, to my family life, to what was going on there. And then I feel more open to hearing stuff that's going on with my family, to hear what's going on with my kids, my partner, whomever it may be, and just looking for those things and recognizing those things. But that was a boundary, because in some instances, my partner, she could have said, well, I want to talk to you first. Why do you always have to go to the mail? And I would have said, it just helps me kind of clear my head just for a couple seconds, just kind of helps me reorient, and it's okay to have that. Doesn't mean it's about her. It's just what I need at the time. And we have to seek also that emotional support from friends, family, or even a mental health provider if you feel like the people in your interpersonal circle, they might be blabbers, or you need an objective perspective. So that's really where a therapist can help out a lot. Now, you got to also consider, if you're in a parasitic relationship, what are the components or consequences, end result of ending or even transforming that relationship? And here you have to look at, so if you leave the relationship, what are the consequences of that? What will the outcome be of that? Could be financial, could be sadness, could be an exacerbation of depression, whatever it is. And I'm not telling you should stay in them. I'm saying that we have to look at those things and then balance them out. And this is where, again, that support system can be really, really, really helpful. And also, if you feel like you can't talk about that with your partner, maybe you need to look into some communication styles, how to be able to convey that in a way that your partner hopefully can feel safe and understand where you're coming from. However, if it is a parasitic relationship and they are manipulative and they are seeking out control and they lack empathy, that is going to be a challenging conversation without a doubt. But sometimes you don't have to do it all in one shot. You don't have to eat the whole gallon of ice cream in one shot. Wouldn't that be great? Just to eat that whole gallon of ice cream? That would be amazing, but you would get sick. And think about that. Great analogy for just going in and just saying, forget it, you're done, I'm done, you stink, you're parasitic, I'm out. That could leave you with some really negative consequences that perhaps you weren't aware of. Or in some cases, if there is violence, that could certainly add to some violent consequences or results. And we definitely don't want that. We want to make sure that we're safe, children are safe, other individuals are safe too, and what could the consequences be? So you have to look at those things, maybe look at different communication styles, communication patterns and approaches that can help you do that. And I would say looking up assertiveness skills can really be helpful for you there as well. Absolutely. Getting into a parasitic relationship, I like to think that a lot of the relationships that we're in, they come from our old patterns of development, whether it's with our folks or caregivers or important people in our life. And what I want you to do is look at your current relationship and say, is there a pattern from my past that makes sense or that explains why I'm in this parasitic relationship? And even by doing that, you could keep a journal. Of course, you have to be careful. You're in a parasitic relationship and they do see it. They might find that. There could be bad consequences to that. So just keeping a journal or having some thoughts or thinking about those things, because building insight will help you understand what you're dealing with. When we understand what we're dealing with, we can make better choices to deal with our future down the road. And that's exactly what we want to do. So thanks a lot for your time, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.